Hey class, welcome back to our session on media research. And today we're going to talk about in-depth interview. So if you remember, on Tuesday and from the previous week, we have covered the method on survey. And we talk about the strength as well as the weaknesses of the method. And we talk about how to design questions for surveys. Now, most of the time researchers who conduct survey also conduct interview because like we talked about before, many of the answers that we get from survey due to its speedy response and the kind of questions we ask, it's nothing that is meaty or nothing that is in-depth. And so we like to actually complement the kind of survey method with in-depth interview. And that is exactly what we're going to do for your second method project. You're going to combine a survey with interview. So for instance, if you have around 50 respondents that you're going to ask to answer your survey, you are most likely going to interview 10% of them. So you're going to interview 5 people and ask them more in-depth questions so that you get to have the information of why they answer the way they do or why they feel the way they do about certain issues or certain subjects. All right, let's start with the first slide. So the goal of an interview is to explore individual experiences and perception in rich details. And the method of interview let the respondent tell their own story on their own terms. In other words, this is kind of a guided conversation because you as the interviewer, you have your agenda and you know exactly what kind of questions you want to ask them. So it's a matter of leading the person that you ask the questions to in order for them to be able to provide you with as much information as you need. And when do we use in-depth interview? We want to use in-depth interview when we want to highlight individual perspective and experiences. We want to address sensitive topic, and we have concerns about fear or reprisal. And it's an addition to structured surveys like what we discussed before. Now, how to conduct interview? This is the data collection interview guides. First of all, you need to be able to have a framework for for you as an interviewer. What is it? The kind of questions you already have the topic, you already have your survey responses, and so you know exactly what kind of framework that you're going to choose so that you can ask further questions to these people. So you have a list of main questions and probes, and those questions are open and non-directive. And you as an interviewer may diverge in order to follow a lead. Yeah. So we have to be flexible as an interviewer. We may have a certain structure in our mind and certain agenda, but we also have to have that flexibility that allows us to talk to the person and be able to go with the flow. And another one that is also important for you to remember is that interviews may reword questions or drop or add questions and change sequence depending on the person that they're talking to. And during the interview, here are the things that you need to remember. That one, you need to use your social skills of empathy, warmth, attentiveness, and humor where appropriate. You should never answer a question for the respondent because you want to hear their story and not your answer. You want to use this active listening technique, and you should never be afraid of silence. People need time to formulate their answer. It's not, especially if the question is challenging, it's not something that you can just answer without thinking. So sometimes we tend to feel awkward when people are silent and not responding immediately. I want you to start be comfortable with silence, and because this is something that is also important when you're interviewing someone on a certain subject that may be sensitive to that person. Having said this, I understand that with our stay at home order or shelter in place order that is going on across the States, it may be challenging for you to actually have a face-to-face interview. So one thing that I would suggest you to do for your second method project is to actually have the interview via Zoom or FaceTime or whatever method that you have that allow you to actually still talk to that person and listen to that pauses, listen to the facial expressions, and allow you to be observant about the way they answer the questions. Some students ask me, is it possible for me to actually do the interview via email? I would strongly recommend you not to do it. I know it's very easy and it's convenient for you as an interviewer, but there are things that you would miss when you actually conduct the interview via email instead of in person. So as much as you can, please utilize the technology. Please use your Zoom, your WebEx, your FaceTime, WhatsApp video call, whatever it is that works for you, so that you can talk to the person that you're interviewing. And then there's some more tips that I do want you to think about. That first, questions that you formulate should be simple. It shouldn't be a complex question that you have to clarify several times just so that the person who you're interviewing it will get the question. And then the best questions are those that elicit the longest answers from your respondent. So what I meant by this, and we're going to watch a TED Talk after this, is that you should try to avoid a simple yes or no question, but try to ask questions that allow them to actually elaborate their answer. I think Celeste Hadley, the person that's going to give this TED Talk next, is going to give you good examples on the kind of questions that you can ask. And then don't ask questions that require your respondents to do your analysis for you. And don't be afraid to ask embarrassing questions. If you don't ask, they won't tell. It's that simple. So the next one is actually, I want you to click on the link to watch a short TED Talk on how to be a better listener. Because we know an important key to be a good interviewer is by being a great listener. And there's no one better to share this information to you than Celeste Hadley, who used to work for NPR. So she used to interview so many people, and now she works as a co-host on PBS. I will also provide the link on the announcement today so that you can just click the link on that brings you to the TED Talk. And then some questions and purpose, some examples of questions that you can ask for the interviews. One, you can say let's start by having you describe how you typically use Instagram. These provide comfortable, non-threatening way into the interview. You can gain a sense of what the respondent do with Instagram. And then you can also, for instance, ask, could you say some more about that? What do you mean by that? So you follow up questions, getting the interviewee to elaborate his or her answer. And I see that in the answers that you gave me for the previous lecture check questions that a lot of you are interested in what people are doing during this stay-at-home order or shelter in place. I think it's a wonderful idea, but I also want you to connect that with the use of media. For instance, you can ask, do they check the news more often because they want to stay on top of the things that are going on right now? Do they go on Twitter more often? Do they chill more often? Do they watch Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or whatever? So I like that you have this idea of what do people do with media during this time of the crisis. So yeah, I would like you to start thinking about how you're going to interview people and the topic that you would like to develop for your second method project. Another questions and purpose, some examples are, so you can ask, for instance, what do most of your family members think of mental health issue? And perhaps followed up by, is that the way you feel too? And you can change these questions to, what do most of your family members think of this shelter in place? And is that the way you feel too, for instance? Indirect questions in order to get at the individual's own view. So you can start by asking about what the people around the person is thinking about that topic, and then you slowly move to asking that person's opinion about that. And then you can ask, for instance, do you mean that mental health has been stigmatized by the mass media? So you can confirm your understanding of the respondent's answer, making sure that what you get, the information that you get from that respondent, is indeed correct. So I know this is only, is going to elicit the kind of response that is yes or no. But if the purpose of the yes or no questions is to check in whether you are on the same page and whether your understanding of their answer is correct, then it's actually really, really good and very useful for your research. Another questions and purpose, some example for you to move on from one topic to a different topic is, you can say that let's move on to a different topic, which guides the conversation and introduce a new question. For instance, you can ask, are you satisfied with the way female bodies are represented in the media? So a question like this, a very direct question like this, is probably best left until towards the end of the interview in order to not influence the direction of the interview. So whenever you want to check in everything and you want to ask precise questions, I would strongly suggest you to move it towards the end of the interview, so that at the beginning and in the middle, the interview feels like they can freely express their opinions without having to constantly be checked by you on your understanding of their answer. Now, so this is a very short lecture on in-depth interview. I would strongly suggest you to read chapter 13 of your textbook, because it provides you with also some more information about how to conduct interview. And then I'm going to actually type all of the lecture check questions on the on the discussion board. So you can go to the discussion board and read all of my lecture check questions after you finish watching this mini lecture, as well as watching the TED Talk presentation by Celeste Hadley. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for basically watching this presentation. I want you to stay safe. I want you to stay healthy. And please, please, please ask me questions. Send me emails if you have any concerns, if you have any issues with any of the material. Okay, thank you guys.